What's up, team? Welcome to another episode of Two Friends Talking Shit About FPL. Once again, I'm Andy.
And I'm Sam. And we've upgraded. We've upgraded our sound. We've upgraded our teams. We
We
think.
have,
Let's
hopefully,
get straight in, shall we?
absolutely. What's new this week, Sam? Tell me. I know you're the man with all of the detail about FPL. There's been transfers, there's been movement, it's impacted FPL. I'm
Well,
learning this most of the time for the first time, so you talk to me.
should we start at the start of the week? Community Shield. United City. Did we watch, did we know the score?
I read highlights. I
You
heard
read the
about the
highlight.
score. I read
Yeah.
highlights. I heard about the score. I don't remember what it was, but Haaland did not score. That's
Haaland
my
did
takeaway
not
from it.
score. Yeah, so I kind of watched a bit of the highlights. I had a bit of a look. I noticed that United put out what is probably going to be first team. Like it was strong team throughout. That forward spots kind of look like they're the ones that we're not sure about, with their many strikers being injured. Um, they look solid. United looks solid, but City played a very young midfield, so they had a good back line, but there was no Foden. De Bruyne didn't start. They played Rico, Lewis, and Bob in the middle. So that can either
Hey,
say that we're excited about City's midfield, or that we're not excited about United. But for great length of that game, United looked good. They scored a good goal. They were going forward. They held City back, and then Bernardo Silva comes on, scores a header, great cross, 1-1, goes to penalties. I think United would be quite happy with a 1-1 in the season. City probably disappointed, but they came out with the win. Their first Community Shield win in 4 attempts. So, who knows? And I saw something this week that the loser of the Community Shield has gone on to win the Premier League for the last 4 seasons. So, does that mean we're on for a Man United win? I hope not.
who knows? Who knows? Stranger things have happened. I mean, I have seen somewhere on the interwebs, I think, floating around that now Bruno Fernandes is in a false nine for United. Is that how it played out over the Community Shield?
It seemed to be. I mean, Bruno's position is always a bit hard to gauge. Like he's always going to start. He's always going to be on a few free kicks. He's going to be on the penalties. Where he plays kind of depends on how the rest of the team is playing and whereabouts he sits. He's probably best in that forward false nine position. Doesn't get that as much when you get like someone like Rasmus Højlund on the pitch. And if Rashford's firing and maybe Garnacho on the other side and they're kind of pivoting in, that does push Bruno back a little bit. But he does like to get forward. We know he likes to have shots from the edge of the box. He scores some great goals. But that's where we want him. That's where he's a great asset to the teams. Is sitting in that attacking midfield, false nine role, playing the little through balls over the tops. And if you didn't see his offside goal, it's probably one of the best offside goals I've seen. It was his run in was great. He was a little bit in front, but the finish was superb. Like Edison was getting nowhere near that. So if we can expect that from Bruno this year, I think he's a good asset
Well,
for
you
the
had
teams.
him in your team. I don't know if I will find out in the team reviews, but he was in your team, so that's why I'm like, oh, that's a good pick if he's playing out of as a false nine.
Yeah, I think the other bit from the community shield was I think it's Ahmad was playing in the middle for United, and he didn't play well. He didn't play badly. He didn't play badly. So if he can nail down a spot in that team, then he's a cheaper option that we can consider playing alongside Bruno. But we'll interesting to see how they line up game one against Fulham. See what team comes out, because United are of the recent seasons. United is, you never really know who you're going to get. They either come out and they can beat Liverpool at Anfield, or they can fall away and concede 4 or 5 to Hull or someone's ridiculous. So let's see what United come out and see how we start the season with them.
That's the hard thing with preseason, and I'm just calling on the memory banks at the moment, but it feels like preseason is not a great judge of how the season's going to go. I mean, Man City isn't going to start with that midfield in the Prem, like when the season starts, right? You wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't expect to that extent, but Foden still has played 0 minutes pre-season after getting back from the Euros. So it's going to be a brave Pep to start him game week 1. So maybe Oscar Bob, you could expect to start maybe alongside De Bruyne or in alongside Kovacic or something in that midfield. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bob start. He's been on the outside, kind of getting some minutes for the last couple of seasons. Started in the Community Shield, looked quite good through the Community Shield, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the middle, game week 1, maybe game week 2, Ipswich, and then when you see Foden starting to get minutes, I think he's probably back to bench fodder. But, you never know. If he kicks off, gets a couple of good goals, assists, he might hang around in the team for a bit longer.
At that price point, for a Man City midfielder who's playing, that's quite tempting if he can get a few starts.
I mean, there's a scenario where Bob starts against Chelsea, sets up Haaland, or scores a goal for himself. He then got Ipswich game week 2 at home. So that if he can add to that tally there, he could go up in price quite significantly in 2 weeks as people try and pull him in for Ipswich. Yeah. That is a strategy I'm thinking about, is my 5.5 having Bob, he go up in price, and then I sell him for someone at 5.5 and make that 0.2 in the first couple of weeks. It's risky, but it might work. He's not going to go down.
Mate, look at you playing the price game now. Legitimately, I've created so many drafts since last week. I have made a draft full of just not very expensive players with the view that it's a punt on price rises. And I thought, okay, how much do I lean into this strategy? Because doing that might just be taking it a bit too far. I still want a playable team who will be earning me points, because the half of the plan is to get price rises without falling too far behind in points.
Yeah, and that's it. But yeah, it's tempting, especially now we've got confirmation that Julian Alvarez is an Atletico Madrid player, so he's gone. So that spot is very much up for it's up for grabs. So Bob could grab that one. We saw what Palmer did last year from a similar price point. So it's going to take something to get a permanent spot in that City midfield. But never say never. City have got a habit of picking up some starlets, so maybe he's the next.
Well, on that note, you talked about there's a few transfers that happened. As always, I'm only across maybe one of them. I didn't know about the Alvarez move. I've heard whispers, but it sounds like that's locked in. What else has been on the cards?
Oh, I think the big one that we all know about, Dominic Solanke. Yeah. He's now a Spurs player. I don't know whether he's going to leave Bournemouth. He's very talismanic. Well, he was very talismanic for them. I think maybe he's that move's going to probably drops any other Bournemouth players out of our thinking for teams, because where are their goals going to come from now? He was very much the goal scorer for that team. But it does make Spurs... Yeah, maybe Semenyo. There is another forward that I can't get his name, but yeah, so they do have other forwards, but Solanke's... He's a big, fast, agile guy. He's hard to replace. He's pretty much one of a kind in the Premier League. There's not others like him. He's a bit more of an overall tank than Haaland. He's a bit quicker. Not than Haaland, but he's a bit quicker than some of the bigger traditional forwards. He's sort of like the Kane type, but I don't think he's going to be as much of that. Deep lying, pulling players in. Kane was very good at pulling the ball in, holding it up and playing off to Son or Kulusevski on the other side. I think with Solanke, it's going to be more of a through balls to him. He's big in the air, balls across. We know what Pedro Porro can do with a cross. I think that Porro to Solanke combination looks quite exciting. The Johnson to Solanke as well could be good. My only concern is Richarlison is still a Spurs player. He has not moved anywhere. How many minutes are they going to share? Or is this Ange saying he's out, Solanke's my guy? Be interesting to see. They have two great fixtures straight up. So, whether they they go and they stick with that, or whether they put Richarlison in for the first few games because he knows the team, or they play with the Kulu up front like they have been for the last preseason games. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a fun pick. It's going to be fun for Spurs, and I think they've needed it since they've lost Kane. I don't think they really filled that spot last year. So yeah,
I have
what are
heard
your thoughts?
that I have heard that they have played brand new signings, slotted them straight in before. I think Van der Ven, I think previously came straight in, and in some of the press releases, the manager was talking about how the way Solanke plays football slots straight into how Spurs play football. So there's some positive comments there, but as always, take those things with a grain of salt. And
Yeah,
for $7.5 million, can you
yeah,
afford a player to not be playing? Because if it was a $5.5 million player, then it's understandable, right? Like if you went for a Yao Pedro, although he seems to be more nailed on now than before, but for $7.5 million, a Solanke, you'd want him to be playing almost all games, most of the game.
yes, you would, and I think he will. I think there's Spurs have not spent, is it 85 million? I can't
Yeah,
remember the price.
huge.
They have not paid significant money for Solanke for him to sit on the bench. Um,
Hmm.
I if there was serious interest in Richarlison, it kind of indicates that they were trying to move him on, or they were happy for him to move on, and they're going with this forward type. So I'd expect Solanke to get most of the minutes. But you saw Ange last year; he was quite keen to make some changes around the hour mark. So whether Solanke gets an hour, and if Tottenham aren't ahead, then change it up and try a different kind of striker. It'll be hard to see because we don't have a preseason friendly to see. But like you say, he has indicated that they're ready to go and they'll go straight in. I'm always a little nervous with managers though, because remember last season when Holland had a little niggle and he might be out for a couple of weeks, and it was 6 to 8 weeks that we lost him for, and he was sitting on our benches. So always a bit wary with managers. And seems to shoot from the hip though. He does seem to be very straight, and he does seem to be very. It's football. Go out and play it. Like it will gel eventually. And Tottenham regularly seem to come out of the gate pretty quick. I think last year for the first 6 weeks we were like it's going to be Tottenham and City for the title, and then they fell away quite quickly. I'd expect them
As
to
an
be a bit
Arsenal
better.
supporter, oh, I was just gonna say, as an Arsenal supporter, ah, it's like, damn it, they got such a good player. But as a FPL fan, oh, this is exciting because it opens up another avenue into Tottenham's attack because they play such attacking football, right? It's almost like, who cares about defense? Let's just try and outscore you.
And you saw that last year with there's a 4-4 with Liverpool, and
The
they had
Chelsea
like a
game?
3-3 with City at the Chelsea game. Like they can score, but they will also concede. So does that make someone like Porro? Does he go in our team, or do the lack of clean sheets go against him? It's hard to tell. But yeah, the Slanky as well. I don't think their penalties, the Spurs penalties, are set. Like he might pick those up as well. Like he was taking them for Bournemouth and he has a pretty good record. Son, I think, has been on the Tottenham penalties, but that's only since Kane has left. Kane was a penalty taker, and Son would take them when Kane wasn't on the pitch. So they're up for grabs as well. So I could see Solanke jumping in and taking those, especially if he takes a couple at the start and gets off and running with them.
What other transfers that have happened, or is that the main one?
That's the main one. There's a couple of others that kind of go under the radar a little bit. Pedro Neto from Wolves was a big last year. Had a bit of a run of assists, and he's moved to Chelsea. Who isn't moving to Chelsea at the moment? So yeah, hit
They're
60
buying
million off to
everyone.
Chelsea. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so he's off to Chelsea. How he'll fit in that team, I don't know. They have so many midfielders in that team. Like, how are they going to line up? because I think Neto's central to left-sided player, so he's probably going to be in that Madueke, Sterling territory. I think Palmer's going to have the right or central. I think that's pretty safe to say. The Gallagher's gone, which makes things easier, but they've still got Caicedo. They've got
Nkunku,
Lavia,
everyone's talking about.
Nkunku. Like, there's so many players in that team now. It's going to be difficult to see who the starters are. And each time I see someone to Chelsea, it kind of lessens my interest in the rest of the team because I want someone who's going to be playing that first game. And Nkunku didn't play the last friendly, so has he picked up a niggle? Was he just not needing to play the game? Was he just not needed for the squad? Hard to tell. But yeah, just all the transfers in and out of that club, it's getting hard to keep track.
Okay, well, that's the transfer news. And just on that, before we move on, you're right with Chelsea.
Go any further than transfers? One interesting one. Fabio Carvalho from Liverpool has moved to Brentford.
I don't know who that is. Talk to me. Is this a good player? What position?
So he has potential. He's been out on loan quite a few times. I think he's sitting at 5'5", but he's not probably going to be like a mini Coutinho or that kind of role, but he's kind of that player who sits in the middle, controlling things a little bit. We talked about ESR, Smith Rowe, going to Fulham and playing in that like deep lying forward role, attacking front role. And I think that if Carvalho gets into that Brentford team, he could play a similar role, especially if Mbeumo does move on. And I could see him, if him and Tony build up a relationship, that could be interesting. Brentford are going to be tricky. They didn't have a great season last year, but they've been solid before that. So, maybe a 5-5 that we can look at, maybe not.
All right. Okay. Interesting. Well, do you want to do the honors? Oh, actually, you shared first last time, didn't you?
I shared first last time.
All right. Okay. Let's go. So let me give a bit of a preface. So I had a Salah-less team. I then made a draft with Haaland and Salah, and then went to a Salah-only draft, and then went to a just pure 5.5s, 6.5s, 4.5 defenders draft just to try and catch prizes. But I've been thinking myself into a tizzle. I think this is what I'm going to go for. Maybe we're about 85% of the way there. So I'll just share my screen.
All right, hit me.
So let's go. There we go. Fantasy football. All right. Here's the team. So if you're listening on podcast, in goal, I've got Henderson and Areola. Now, that's not fully locked in. These could literally be any 4.5 mil keepers. I'm not fully convinced on Areola, but Henderson, I'm pretty sure I want to keep. The other alternative is to downgrade Areola down to a 4 mil keeper and upgrade to Henderson, or have 0.5 floating. Okay, because realistically, I kind of like the idea of just playing one keeper and not ever rotating it. Backline, I've got Vardiol, Alexander-Arnold, Barco, and Robinson, and Howard Bellis. So I've got 2 premiums, 1 4.5 and 2 4 mil defenders. Now, Vardiol, because of his attacking threat, I heard somewhere, I think on FPL Scout, they were doing a heat map thing for Vardiol and Alexander TAA, and literally very similar, just on opposite sides of the field. So that was my reason for Vardiol, and also TAA. This is the cheapest he's been. And I'm like, okay, a player like that who's cheap, let's hope that he goes up and he performs. Because I remember there was a period where Liverpool's fixtures last season were really good and TAA just crushed it. Fulham apparently have been really good so far in pre-season, and Robinson has also been looking very attacking. So I've been going for very attacking defenders, and Barco as well. With Estepinian out, Barco seems to be the guy. And Howard Bellis, I think that's just, I wanted a Southampton defender, and that was my only person that I see people were like, it's 4 mil. You could do it. In our midfield, we've got Diogo Jota, Eze, Smith Rowe, Saka, and Winks. Now, Winks is a 4.5 mil. I need a 4.5 mil just to make this price point work. So this is where I had lots of umming and ahhing. This was my Salah and Haaland draft. But with the new manager and with Jota, with how he's performing in pre-season so far, I'm tempted to give Jota a go. Because what that allows me to do is it allows me to have Alexander-Arnold in the back as well. So it's almost like I could either have Salah and a really cheap player, or Jota and I think I did another downgrade somewhere else, but then or Jota and TAA, right? And so that's the reasoning for Jota. Eze, I've come around to him. I'm like, okay, we'll have Eze. Everyone's talking about him. I'm still a bit like scarred from last season where without Elise, without Mateta, is he actually going to perform? But hey, let's see what he can do. Smith Rowe being on pens for Fulham, I believe. And also apparently he's the new pre-season darling for Fulham. Apparently. And Saka, I know I had Son here. But with the Solanke move, I'm like, I think I can cover Son and I still get to keep an Arsenal player and have Solanke instead, which leads me to my front line of Solanke, Haaland, and Isak. So I think Haaland and Isak are pretty self-explanatory. Captain armband is on Isak at the moment. Solanke, whether he starts or not, this is the thing which concerns me the most, because technically, if Jota doesn't play or doesn't start, Solanke doesn't start, my team does not look that good anymore, right? But just going on pre-season and going on how good Solanke is, and like you said, Tottenham are going to spending this much money to get Solanke in, to only bench him. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. So the other thing to keep in mind is how good was he last season at a team like Bournemouth, and now imagine him at Tottenham with the likes of Son, Maddison feeding him, or like playing and linking up with him. That's going to be amazing for FPL, and that's why I switched Son to Saka and then brought in Solanke for who was at Armstrong, I think. All right, so I've got no money in the bank, no dollars in the bank. This is my full team. The changes which I'm considering are going back to a Haaland and Salah draft. I'm just unsure about this. It should be called the Hala draft, shouldn't it? The Hala draft. Or this is a bit... I don't know how to feel about this. In my mind, this kind of makes sense. Downgrade Vardio to Pedro Porro, so save 0.5. Downgrade Areola to a 4 mil. Upgrade Henderson to Raya from Arsenal, and literally just play that one player, goalkeeper, all season. Reason is this: Arsenal's defense is so good, and apparently in preseason the defense has been solid. And if we still think Arsenal is going to be like top 3 defense in the league, why wouldn't we just have one keeper for the whole season that's going to be an Arsenal keeper? So that's my... Oh, yeah?
Set and forget goalkeeper. I mean, it's a good strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, set and forget. Anyway, that's the team. Thoughts? Talk to me. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty... I quite like it. I was listening to a pod this week where they had someone on who was a very big Brighton fan, and I think like even when the Stupinane comes back, that Barco's taking free kicks, he's taking corners, he's very attacking. Like Brighton just beat Villarreal 4-0, and he was very involved. So they're quite confident that even when Stupinane comes back, the Barco can keep that spot on that side. He kind of fits the new manager's system a little better. Smith Rowe, I think he's... Yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet. I want to see how he fits in that team a little better, and I want to see what Fulham put out. But him linking up with Muniz could be quite good. And like I say, you got Robinson on that side as well. I think they're pretty solid. I'm with you with Eze. Mateta's not back yet. Well, he's probably back now. The Olympics are done, but he's probably not going to be ready to start. Um, for me, Eze depends on Gahey and Anderson. If Gahey goes to Newcastle and Anderson goes to Fulham, I think the spine of the team starts to fall apart, and I think then we probably should be wary of Crystal Palace. Um, but yeah, until that happens, I mean, they do have Munoz still in the back line, so get a bit of stability. For now, I think I'm happy with Crystal Palace, and yeah, it depends on who goes and what happens. Jota, yeah, I like it. I like it. He's by far the best finisher that Liverpool have. He needs less shots to score the same amount of goals. Um, I can see him definitely playing the first few games up top until Darwin's back in the mix. Liverpool played 2 games in a single day at the weekend. They played what appears to be the first team, which had Jota, Diaz, Sabozalai, and they won 4-1. And the second team, maybe we'll call it, had the likes of Robertson, Gakpo, Darwin, those coming back from internationals to get 90 minutes in the legs, and they drew 0-0. So, maybe they're still not quite up to speed yet, and I would expect Jota to start a few games. So, yeah, I think that's a good pick. We've talked about Solanke, Haaland's a given, and I think Isak's a given. Like, with the amount of teams he's in,
Yeah.
you cannot not have him, um,
I,
especially if you're going with
and
a
the thing,
Haaland draft.
yeah, and the thing just to add there was, I really want Salah in the draft as well, but to me, having TAA and Jota hopefully will give me enough coverage for Liverpool's amazing fixtures without Salah. But I am always, I think, 3 moves or 2 moves, depending on who I downgrade, to get Salah back in. It depends on whether I want to sacrifice Saka or not. Yeah. But anyway, that's the team after a lot of
Yeah.
tinkering. I think we're like 85, 90% of the way there. I don't think it's going to change too much from this. But who knows?
So
Last
if
minute
you don't go
transfers
for
could happen.
Raya, if you don't go for Raya, are you then going to look at an Arsenal defender as their fixtures turn game week 4-5?
Yes, potentially. I'll look at shipping Vardio for an Arsenal defender. I know I want access to Arsenal defense because, yeah, it just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but I think you've got City Arsenal is around game week 5, game week 6, and then out of there, they both have got pretty good fixtures going for the next 5 or 6. So it'd be interesting for Arsenal cover, especially with do we want to go 3 up the top, or are we gonna be happy with a couple at the back? So, but I think your bench is your only downside, and if you do, like you say, if you don't get a slanky start, you're hoping off an off the bench goal. But yeah, I'll show you mine, and we can compare.
Yes. I'm keen to see what changes you've made.
This one, shit. All
Ooh,
right,
let's have a look.
let's see if I can zoom out of it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that is a lot of Liverpool players. Oh, and you do have Raya in the back line. Look at that. Okay, do you want to read your
So,
team out for the podcast listeners?
like, so my starting in goal, we got David Raya from Arsenal. I was not happy with no Arsenal cover. I went back and forth with the goalkeepers. I had Pickford. I went to a 4-5. I had Flecken. And then I was kind of committed to collecting your transfers for 4 or 5 weeks. And then using those to change my team around. I kind of I don't not like the strategy, but it wasn't my favorite strategy. So yeah, that went out the window, and David Raya came in because he's just going to give me that bit more stability in the back line. I hope. And then in the defense, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Gvardiol, and Pedro Porro. Um, I've gone from quite weak at the back to quite strong at the back. I think you need some City cover with Guardiola. Uh, the Liverpool fixtures are great, as you say, and Trent there is just going to provide hopefully those assists and maybe get a couple of clean sheets. I think I'm going for more the assists with TAA. He is going to be playing I think the right back role under Slot, so he's going to get less forward, but he's still on free kicks, he's still on corners. Hopefully some stuff comes out of there. Like I said with my preamble before, I like Porro pick. We know what kind of crosses he put in. We know the assists he got last year. I think that can only go up with Solanke. And they do have a good opening run. So I've popped him in there. And I've also got Mikalenko from Everton. They're good. They're defensively good under Sean Dyche. I think he's going to be good in rotation. And I've also got Barco as well. Same reasons I've mentioned before. I'm hoping he can pin down a spot, and then he gives me an option to go at 3 at the back and move on Trent or Gvardiol for a bit of money. I can either think about bringing in an Arsenal defender, or we can look elsewhere. Midline, we've got Mohamed Salah, Diego Jota, Eze, and Bruno Fernandes on the pitch. I can't look back ahead of Liverpool's fixtures. They look good, and I think Jota's going to be playing up front, so an out of position midfielder is great for that. If it doesn't work, he's a decent price, and I can swap him out, pick one of them and swap one of them out. I had Nkunku for quite a while, and he only left today, so he can come back in game week 3 when Chelsea's fixtures get a bit better for their good run if I needed to. Salah can come out, Saka can come in, Palmer can come in. But I've also got that 8.5 Fernandes in there. So if United do not fire off, he can change pretty quickly as well. And this team, I think I've got 0.5 in the bank to play with. I did have a million, but that was before I put Porro in. I had Munoz before. I still might go Munoz, but I think I like the Porro pick, and that would get me a mil. And I've got, at the moment, I've got Brereton Diaz from Southampton on the bench. There had a couple of rumblings that he might be playing again as an out of position forward. He started a couple of preseason friendlies out there. So if Southampton are going to play him up top, I think he's worthwhile. And then my front line, I've got Isak, Solanke, and Muniz. No Haaland for me. I think my money's in my midfield. Again, I've played around with this a little bit. And I've gone back and forth between Solanke and Kai Havertz. I'm not settled on Solanke, but I'm wary that
as an Arsenal Havertz.
Yeah, as an Arsenal Havertz.
What? Okay.
He's got great fixtures, and I feel like he's going to be settled in that starting lineup to start with. I think Havertz is a safer bet than one of the defenders from Arsenal. I think it's more likely going to start. But then Arsenal have had a fit Gabriel Jesus as well in pre-season. I'm only going to want Havertz if he's playing that forward role. If he's playing that attacking midfield role, I don't want an out of position forward playing an attacking midfield. So he comes out of my thinking. So that's why I've got Solanke in there. They've got a good 2 fixtures. I think there's some goals in those first 2 fixtures. I think they got Leicester away, and I think they got Everton at home. So that there's goals in those games. And I think if Solanke gets off and gets a couple of goals, he's going to rise in price, and then I might get priced out of him. So Havertz for Solanke was one of my options. My other, a bit more differential pick is I'm playing with the idea of having Oscar Bob instead of Brereton Diaz. For the reasons I said before. If he goes up in price, I can then swap him back to Brereton Diaz when I would want him in game week 3 to rotate out with Fernandes. And then maybe I can make 0.2 and end up with the same team. It is booking in a transfer, which I'm not super happy with, which is why I haven't done it at this point. Yeah, so I've kind of gone back and forth between. I've also had a draft where I had Isak, Solanke, and Havertz up front, and then I dropped Oh, one of my backline, I think I dropped Eze down to Nkunku, and that got me the money. And then I had zero point zero in the bank. And I had, yeah, Isak, Slanky, and Habits up front. But then I like the Fulham fixtures to start with as well, and I think there could be some goals in there. So this is where I am at the moment. Um, and I think, Southampton got Newcastle first up, so that's why I got Brereton Diaz is on the bench. But if I get a Jota doesn't play or a Slanky doesn't play, and I get the Brereton Diaz off the bench, I'm not unhappy. I think my back three are going to start, and I've gone for who I know is going to start. I think I'm more in the position of see how we go, and I'm open to an early wild card. So I'm really attacking the Liverpool fixtures, attacking the Newcastle fixtures, the Tottenham fixtures, the Fulham opening fixtures, and the Southampton fixtures aren't bad. Like if you're going to get a run, it's probably now. And then game week, like I talked about the fixture swings with Arsenal, City have one. Liverpool continue to have good fixtures after a little bit of a blip in the middle. So a wild card game week 5, game week 6, not off the cards. So if I can really attacking at some points now, I can revisit whether not having Haaland is working for me. I think like we talked about last week, I don't want to get left behind and have to make that up as we go along. But then, yeah, it's also a bit worth the risk. Like I'm going with a risk with not having Haaland, obviously, but then I kind of negated that risk a little bit by having people on the pitch I think will start. I think, and if the first couple of games, I would expect every one of those guys to have a return of some sort. Even on the bench, I'd like to think that Mikolenko can get a clean sheet in the first couple of weeks. Barco getting an attacking return. And again, if Barco never plays for me, that's fine. If he plays well and he goes up in price, then I can ship him off later for a bit more than the 4 mil I paid for him. That works well. I didn't go over my second keeper, but it's Virginia from Everton. Never heard of him,
Yeah.
but he's not going to play, and he's not going to go down in price. So he is safely in there. And if Pickford's injured, then he might come out, but probably not. And that's why I got David Raya, my set and forget, at least until wildcard. On wildcard, I might swap him out for the 4.5, who's looking the best. I can look at, we've talked about the Fulham defence. Leno's still there as an option as a 5. So I'm very much set up for until wildcard, but I can ride this team to game week 8, 9, 10 quite easily. Eze's probably the one who will go next if I needed to change something. Like we said last week, I haven't seen Fernandes in many teams, and I'm kind of betting on him to get going and really push that team forward as one of the old heads in that team. So we'll find out at the weekend, I suppose, as long as nothing else changes. But it's all changed. I feel I'm happy with the team structure, and I'm happy that I've got price points across all lines. Like I've got an 8-5, a 7-5, and a 6 in the front line. So it's a bit of a stretch. I've taken Watkins out to go down to Solanke, but Watkins still hasn't played in pre-season. He might not play for a couple of weeks. And then if he doesn't play for 2-3 weeks, or doesn't play full time for 2-3 weeks, I'm starting to look at that wild card, and then he can come in on the wild card. 12-5, an 8-5, a 7, and another 8-5. Two 7-5s and an 8-5 in midfield gives me a bit of movement there, as well as a 5-5 that might go up in price if he does become an out of position forward. And then we obviously got the expensive Trent, and then the 6 Guardiola and the 5-5. There's a bit of movement in there, and that can always move from a 5-5 goalkeeper. So I'm happy for now. We'll see what I'm happy with at the end of the week. But yeah, interesting that we have similar core teams, and our differentials are TAA, Gvardiol, Jota, Eze, Solanke, Isak are the same for both, and Barco the same for both. So it's really those it's the no Haaland versus the no Salah.
Yeah, and look, I'm looking at your team and I'm just thinking, that's a good team. It's amazing what you can afford when you don't have Haaland. He is a luxury product.
Yeah, and I played with the no Salah as well and having the Jota coverage. But because Salah is not 15 million like Haaland, it doesn't get you much further along. It is 5 million, I think, over Jota. But there aren't really many options that I would like to move. Like, I think Fernandez is locked, and I probably wouldn't move him up. Eze, I don't think he quite stretches to anyone that I would want to go to, and I'd only be looking at swapping Muniz out for Havertz. But I can do that now.
Hmm.
And I still kind of like the Muniz pick for now until we see how the Arsenal team lines up.
I like your Raya pick. That's the one thing, like I said, I've been thinking about is just downgrading Vardio to Porro so that I can turn Henderson into Raya and downgrade Areola to a formula like you've got there. There's just that something about the set and forget is easy, right? And across the span of a season, if you think a team is going to be one of the best defenses, then logically their keeper should be one of the highest scoring across the span of the season.
Yeah, and I think Raya is set in my team until the wild card, and then I imagine he will come out because I think at that point, once Arsenal have got City out of the way to start the season, I think I will probably go a Trent down to a Ben White. I
Yeah,
think
the defending
Ben
would be
White,
amazing.
he feels like the one that's the most settled in that team and is going to have the least rotation. Um, and that's a 7 down to a 6-5. So, it's not, it doesn't change the team structure too much. But then if I drop Raya down to a 4-5 and get a million, that's saved a million and a half that I can then put into the rest of the team. And if I can jump on some price rises at the same time, I might be able to start stretching, the Muniz to a Havertz or, a Slanky up to a Watkins without really changing too much. But that's the hope. But it doesn't always work out that way. But we got to get going. We got to see. Interesting to see what happens. Remembering that United play Fulham on the Friday night in the UK, so the deadline won't be Saturday; it will be a Friday. So we want to
Oh,
make sure we're all locked and set before that happens.
oh, I had Brereton Diaz. Looking at your Brereton Diaz, I had him, I think, last week, and I've moved to Smith Rowe, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
ah, I go back to Brereton Diaz. It's so tough, and I want Porro in my team. There's just no way I can get him in there to have the freemium at the back like you have, while still retaining my midline, and my midfield's already, I'm happy except for Winks, but I just have to have Winks at 4.5 there. There's just no other choice.
yeah, and I think I'm just wary of a lot of the players in my team. I think are set for the first couple of weeks. I don't think we're going to see Jota ousted by Darwin. I don't think we're going to see a Foden come in. I think Saka's going to play because we know Arteta likes to play him. But then I'm just wary that these players are going to come back, and we're going to see some movement. So I want to be able to move around a little bit, and I want to be able to have a bench player. So if Jota doesn't play a game, I want to have a bench play coming off that I'm reasonably happy coming off. I don't want our wings coming off my bench, and that's why for Diaz for me is the upside because if he is playing as that out position forward, it's better than him coming up. It's better than another Southampton midfielder coming in or a Leicester or a Ipswich player. And then when we see the team just settled a little bit, I might start to think about those other 4 million defenders, 4.5, 5 million midfielders that I know are not going to come on the pitch and have one good strong sub. But for now, I would like to be a bit more prepped just for that time that 3 players don't play and we're all of a sudden screwed. Because I think looking across some teams in the community, there is a lot of teams like yours that are very, very strong, but don't have a lot coming off the bench. But yeah, it's where
Mate, you should have seen my Haaland and Salah draft. It was like 2 strong players and, or maybe 3 strong players and a very questionable rest of the team.
yeah, and that's the sacrifice that you make by having your 200 point guys on there, and do your players that you have around them, do they outscore or match them? You won't know until the end of the season. But you know, we, gems pop out every year. Like we keep going on about Palmer last year. Trent used to be a 4 million defender, and he just was a gem that season and the season after. So there is going to be someone who pops out of the woodwork. I know we talk about the 5-5 midfield bracket. We've got you've got Carvalho at Brentford, who we said is an option. There's Bob and Brereton Diaz. There is enough of them to go around that if we're shrewd, we can probably move between them, jump the price rises, get off him, get the 0.1, do the 0.2, whatever, and then pick the next one, and off we go again. But picking the right one that you don't lose value in, and it does go up in price, because you don't want to be on Brereton Diaz if Oscar Bob's going up 2.2 million, and then you miss out on it. You need to be on the right one at the right time.
And you
How
also don't
long
want
do
to
you
keep
play that game
jumping.
for?
But also, you don't want to keep jumping, because think about it this way, right? Is Palmer last season, if you jumped off of him onto someone else, you then get priced out of him to get back into him again, because if he goes up 0.4, you only keep 0.2, so it's going to cost you 0.2 more to buy him again. So,
Yeah.
so you almost want to play the game of, can you have two of those 5.5s and then jump one out? So, for example, instead of me doing the Raya upgrade, I downgrade my second 4.5 mil goalkeeper, downgrade Vardiol to Porro, and then upgrade Winks to like Brereton Diaz or Bob, right? Then I've got two 5.5 mil midfielders, right? But once again, I don't know, decisions. One move I think I will make is I'll downgrade my second goalkeeper to a 4 mil non-playing one and just have 0.5 mil floating, just to make some changes with. Because I'm not going to play that second goalkeeper. I'm happy just to keep one.
Yeah, I think, and if you're happy with Henderson, that's great. I think the only other thing you could do is drop that to a 4 and move your 4.5 to a 5 and pick a Pickford or someone, Leno, someone in that category who could be a set and forget for you. I think that the jumping off the 5.5 strategy is, for me, it's only for those 5.5ers. It's not for the people who are going up. It's for the short punts. The Oscar Bob, who's going to play for 3 weeks, who might go up and then will come back down. Jump in, jump out. Southampton start well and Diaz is getting there, and then they start to have a downward trend, getting off that train before it's too late and moving to the next one. I'm not going to be playing that game with the Salahs and the Palmers and the Jotas, because it's too, like I say, it is too risky, because they're bought in bulk and they're sold in bulk. And we know what FPL is like. We know the bandwagon start, and we know that Darwin hits the post 4 times in a game and he's sold by 20% of the people who own him overnight. But this is a question that I've come, and I would love to happen, but can Slot get the best out of Darwin?
Well, we'll find out. Well, I kind of, at the moment, hope no, because I've got Jota in my team.
But like I said, he's not going to play for a couple of weeks. But if
That's
game
true.
week 9, 10, we can have our 7.5 Darwin, our 7.5 Solanke, and our 8.5 Isak in the front line, all banging in goals. We don't need a Haaland. We can then spread the money
That's a
elsewhere.
good front line. That's an amazing front line.
But if he can hit the net and not the post, or spectators, that's another one. We don't want him hitting spectators, because we've already had that this year.
Hey, if you hit a spectator, do you get minus points in FPL?
I think it counts as a red card and a suspension, but let's see what happens. It depends on what it happens. But there's so many stories that could unfold this year. With the way the pricings have been done this year, I hope that we don't have a big injury, because if you get a Haaland, a Palmer, a Saka, a Salah injury, that's just going to push that money into the rest of the team, and it's going to, those decisions that we've had to make, kind of, they go away a little bit, and we can kind of make do with what we want. So we want these guys to stay fit. We want it to be a competition. We want to be hiding behind the sofa 1 week because you don't have Haaland, and then delighted the next week because Haaland's blanked and Salah's scored 4. That's what we want. We want it to be competitive, but It feels harder this year. It feels like a harder game. Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
4 days
Agreed.
to go.
Well, 4 days to go. We'll chat next week. Well, I guess we'll find out.
We will. Let's see after game week 1. Let's see with the Haaland or Salah is treating as well.
Fantastic. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. And we will see each other again next week.
See you next week, guys. Thank you for joining.